Well, hello there, people. I wanted to make this video. Hopefully it'll be a short one. I wanted to make this video before I posted a particular video that's on YouTube. And it concerns the material that Vogt has put forth regarding the system clock speed, or what have you, of the OS or God or whatever, the environment that we find ourselves existing in. The clock speed of 12,068, because it seems that his Vogt's research has led him to the conclusion that every 12,068 years there seems to be some type of cataclysmic event here on Earth, and really not only Earth, but for much of the solar system, the galaxy, the universe, basically. So he basically, now you should go to his YouTube channel and watch his videos. I'll leave a link in the description below, and I'll also leave a link to the video that I'm going to be talking about after this. So he basically has determined through research, going as far back as Abraham and the Torah, the Moses and the Hebrew alphabet, and a few other things, basically that in ancient times, a long time ago, ancient times, that Abraham and his family or whatever came across some very sophisticated, much advanced technology by millions of years, maybe hundreds of millions of years. And what the result of that was the Torah, the Hebrew alphabet, and so on and so forth, and his discovery of what he thinks the clock cycle is of 12,068, which is encoded within the Torah, well, I would say the Torah, not necessarily the Old Testament, although some of the material probably is in there, but not all of it to the extent that it is in the Torah. A lot of people have said over the years that the Torah is basically a programming manual, or some type of computer language programming type of documentation. And I followed along with the story pretty well, and I think it's very reasonable. I think that there's a lot that should be considered in that material, and it's frankly quite obvious why that it's not mainstream. There's numerous reasons for that. I feel strongly about. So this video I watched the other night, last night actually, and I will link this video also in the description box below. There was a physicist, her name is Theresa something. The video comes from Gaia.com, and the title of it is Developing multidimensional awareness. And the narrator, this woman Theresa, she's a physicist, and she covers basically three different theories that are going around, floating around in physics, that people think that may be valid. and she, like I said, she goes through all three of them. And the third one that she comes up with, or that she presented, to me sounds very, very reasonable, and it incorporates string theory, which is a quantum discipline, or basically, and people say, oh, well, that's, that's not, it's not viable, it's been unproven, or it hasn't been proven, or what have you. But if you listen to her presentation and you take into account the information behind the development of the Hebrew alphabet, Doug Vogt's presentations and his material, his research that he has delved deeply into, and come to the conclusion of this 12,068 year clock cycle, it makes, at least in my opinion, it makes a tremendous amount of logic, and it sounds very reasonable, and it sounds very probable. This last theory, or what have you, that Patricia presents in her video incorporates the tree of life in the Kabbalah. Okay, some people say Kabbalah, or whatever. She was pronouncing it Kabbalah, K-Y, Kabbalah. Okay, so the tree of life, and in the video there's a representation of that tree of life, and I'm sure most people are familiar with that symbol, okay? But they do a 3D rendition of this symbol, and so that you can look from the top through this geometric shape to the bottom, okay, like a bird's eye view. And there happen to be 4 sections in the center, or not in the center, but around the center, which also brings up a point that if you've ever seen the, it wasn't until 2016 that scientists were able to image, photograph, what have you, a single photon, okay, and the result, it looks very much like the Crusader's cross, okay. Now I'm not sure what the orientation of that photon is, but it looks very similar to what, if you're looking down through the tree of life geometric shape, and you see the 4 sides, and then there's a center, it looks very much like that. And as well, there are other very old ancient religions, and their symbology incorporated kind of the same cross type figure or whatever. It seems to be, as far as the planet is concerned, the civilizations on the planet, it's pretty much planet wide. It's all over the world, all over the globe. So in that geometric shapes certainly do, as with Plato and the Platonic solids, and the way that they nest together. I've also seen some research on DNA and how geometrically it's incorporated geometrically, and it's basically, there's a process of how matter comes into being, and it's all using frequency, and which leads to geometric patterns, energetic patterns that lead to matter being produced through geometric forms, okay, using frequency and whatnot. So yeah, this thing is very intriguing, I believe. And one of the interesting things on this tree of life, the theories that she was putting forth, I'm sorry, you'll have to excuse me, but I don't recall exactly what the second theory was, but it was said, the way it was presented was that John Fuller, I think was his name, he was a physician or a physicist, and they were going over this theory or whatever, and he had quoted that no, that's not correct because it would produce too much baggage. Okay, it would, in other words, it would take such large resources and computational or processing power that it wouldn't be feasible. It wouldn't be, basically instantaneous like the environment that we presently are experiencing. However, the third theory that Patricia goes over, like I said, it involves the tree of life and the geometry, and they explain how the DNA and the twist, the helix of the DNA, and not in depth, but she does a really good job of explaining it, basically in layman's terms. But anyway, this third theory, basically, we have 144 different levels to complete, before we make it back to source. And in the tree of life, there was a little bit of difference there. I'll have to watch the video again, but there were 22 paths of how a person, the stages a person would go through before they reached the source or what have you, which is very interesting because the Hebrew alphabet was 22 characters. Okay, and this third theory that Patricia explained, it didn't, to the best of my knowledge, it didn't seem to incorporate all of the baggage that John Wheeler had quoted about, had talked about, and said that no, this isn't it, it would be impossible. So that led me to believe, through the Hebrew alphabet and whatever, and I've said for a while that I think karma, whether a person believes in it or not, I believe karma is actually an algorithm. An algorithm, where it's stored, whatever. I'm not sure about the hardware or what have you, but it's an algorithm. And then with Doug Vogt's work in the 22 character Hebrew language and the 10 codes that he decoded that Moses used to write the Torah, and then with this third theory that Patricia was explaining with the tree of life, and there are 22 paths. There's some other numbers in there as well, but I'm sticking with this 22. How she related it to the tarot deck, the major arcana cards of the tarot deck, which I'm familiar with, it makes pretty good sense, to me, at least. It sounds very reasonable. And I believe that these 22 different, what she called were paths, I think they're actually 22 different algorithms that each of us has. And each of us, as we progress through our existence, that we are adding, subtracting, however we are working on developing, or at the least changing, our personal algorithms of these 22 paths or whatever it may be. And I feel that this, looking at it as an algorithm, would cut back or require considerably less computer data storage and processing if it was just reading particular algorithms and processing those, rather than rendering everything every however many whatever fractions of a second or what have you, to produce the environment that we presently are experiencing. So the people that aren't very knowledgeable, or not, don't understand how computers work or whatever, you may not quite grasp this, but I think that programmers, people that are very familiar with the operations, what goes on inside of a computer, basically some software and RAM and what have you, hardware and software, I think they will understand this, and it will probably make sense. Now, whether or not it would be something that people feel strongly about as far as being accurate, who's to say, but only themselves. But I feel very strongly about it, and yes, these are algorithms. These are algorithms. I think that you talk about simulation, people think, oh, you need a computer the size of, our entire galaxy to be able to figure all this stuff out. No, I think it could basically be done on computers for the most part, maybe not all of it, but for the most part, I think it could be done with computers that we have on this planet that are already in existence. And again, this is because the computer isn't rendering or running computations to produce the physical world that we are existing in. It's just processing algorithms, which I think is a little bit different. When you talk about 3D modeling and the work that goes into actually the initial creation of a shape or an image or whatever in 3D, now maybe there are techniques out there that are in software that don't require the time, but in early 3D programs it was very time consuming, and like I said, they've probably come up with CAN cycles, just repeat formulas and processes that do this kind of automatically. But I think a lot of the computational power or the computational power required to do that type of thing could be drastically reduced with software that wasn't trying to produce and process an image over and over and over, from scratch, but wants a basic idea or a basic iteration or structure or whatever of, say, a 3D image. And I think this could go as far as also be used in consciousness and other such things. But this, I think the processing and programming of algorithms. Now we see search, Google and these other, everything's using algorithms, and you might say your phone might hear you talking to a friend or whatever, and you bring up, oh yeah, I'd love a Maserati car, and there you go, another hour later, and you're thumbing through or surfing the web or whatever, and lo and behold, there pops up a advertisement for a Maserati, that kind of thing. And in my opinion, that's basically a nefarious purpose that people are using algorithms for. But I think they're onto something. And some of these top-notch people, these programmers or whatever, and if there's anybody that's been keeping up with what I've put out there, not that I'm an expert by any means. I'm not a programmer. I'm not a whatever. I'm not an expert in any of this stuff, but I'm just going by what I see and how I reason through it enough to be able to grasp maybe a basic understanding of something. So anyway, yeah, the 22, which also the number 22 supposedly represents God. Another number that I think, from what I understand, if I remember correctly, another number that represents God is 4. And then an ancient symbol for God is the circle. Let me see if I can get my hand in here. The circle with the dot in the center. The circle was God, and the dot in the center was existence, basically, something like that. So anyway, yeah, I wanted to put this out there before I posted the video. Developing multidimensional awareness. I would watch the whole video. I think it's like between 15 and 20 minutes long. But the last third of it is about the theory that I've just spoken about. Not as far as algorithms or whatever, but as far as the tree of life and how it possibly relates to the creation, the DNA, and stuff like that. So anyway, thanks for watching. I hope you find this helpful. I hope you have a blessed day, night, morning, evening, what have you. Let's we can do this, people. We can make this place, this environment, more beneficial and more benevolent for all that exist within this environment, and maybe even outside of the environment. So, positive attitude. Let's keep plugging at it and see what we come up with. Thanks for watching. See you later. Bye.